You are listening to the Mary Jane Society podcast, where you will meet entrepreneurs, cultivators, scientists, doctors, and inventors in the cannabis industry.
I'm Pam Schmiel, marketer and publicist in the cannabis industry. Many of you probably have heard of our next guest, AC Moon. She has been toiling away in the California cannabis industry for about 25 years, where she earned a degree in horticulture, endured raids, and dealt with a federal indictment. She has also opened dispensaries and developed one of the first line of edibles back in the day. AC is also a multi-patented inventor, an Emerald Cup judge. Her international work is expansive, but in the past few years, she has worked in the Caribbean to help farmers protect their genetics and family recipes through intellectual property. Let's welcome AC Moon. If you could just give us a quick, background summary of your background. I know it's extensive. I know there's so many things, but just maybe current or however you want to do it. I would love to hear just a little summary for people who will be listening before we jump into questions.
Okay, thank you. I'm AC Moon Cameron. I've been working in the cannabis industry for about 25 years. I came in as a horticulturist and went to college for horticulture while taking care of my mom with cancer and, raising a kid during raids and dealt with federal indictment and these types of things that really cause a lot of harm to our culture. Opened dispensaries, started Harvest Moon Munchie Company, one of the first non-chlorophyll concentrate made organic edibles companies in the Bay Area in 2001. And then again, dealing with more persecution through all walks of life as we tried to tout medical marijuana in the Bay Area, really working in the advocacy sector for cancer, multiple sclerosis patients, and things like that. Dealt with more prohibition, went into inventing, decided that I saw the future being a very corrupt one and that I needed to diversify my portfolio. So I started inventing and invented my first product in 2012, Crop Tops Greenhouses, which is an instant pop-up portable greenhouse that protects plants from storms, or people use it for, pesticide or different controls in their gardens. And so started learning intellectual property and really getting into patents and genetics, keeping my one Afghani goo mother alive for about 19 years, one plant. I kept it in homeostasis through that entire time and did a lot of research. And so got really intrigued by educating worldwide and started a consulting company in about 2015. Started working internationally in Thailand, Morocco, Bermuda, most recently 2019 or 2018, started working in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, helping with their new medical marijuana and medical mushroom laws, as well as helping traditional farmers save equity through learning how to gain intellectual property in European areas and those types of things, teaching cultivation, horticulture, and business building to the natives in the St. Vincent and Grenadine Islands, which there's 32 islands there. And then now for the last year and a half or so, for the last couple of years, I've been working with Oaksterdam University, helping to educate different consumers and being an equity mentor as they excelled. And now I work with University of Virgin Islands Cell, as well as Oaksterdam University, to build the first endemic commercial cannabis commerce course for the people to have equity and the ability to work in their space in their small island chamber, which the U.S. Virgin Islands is down in the Caribbean, though it is American owned territory. So it's a very unique space. So I love working in equatorial areas and Northern Hemisphere as well. But I'm actually from Northern California. I work in Humboldt and, Mendocino and Nevada County. And so Grass Valley is where I originally hailed my company is from, and just got back from Humboldt yesterday, actually.
Is it really called Grass Valley? Is it really?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And we have a huge epicenter of cannabis growing in the Sierra Nevadas because the climate is absolutely perfect in this hemisphere, and we don't have to deal with as much ocean mist as we do in Humboldt. So we have
Oh,
a little
okay.
bit easier climate to cultivate in and have a little bit higher quality sometimes. Depends on the genetics, of course.
So are you cultivating then still?
I always am cultivating. I
Okay.
have 40 acres myself. I have a farm in Northern California that I am currently working on licensing on, but right now we're actually looking at creating more of an actual on-hand learning site for more people to do exchange student internships and apprenticeships in the cannabis manufacturing or edible space, so they can have more of the culture with the elders that really hold a lot of the information that you're not going to find online or in different ways. Just finding diverse ways to use the property and educating, since right now honestly the cultivation taxes in our state don't make um, an easy space for the craft farmers to get ahead. So
I
we're
know.
got multi-state operators, and a little bit difficult to stay in that space. So being
Yeah.
able to educate and build these programs has been a great way to, balance out those times. But I just pulled some, I actually was just packing a bowl. You have to excuse me because I broke my foot and I have surgery in the morning. So that's why I'm
No.
not even at my desk.
Oh,
My foot is up right now on ice pack. So
oh no. Oh my
I was
God.
working at the Emerald Cup a couple of weeks ago, and we were getting the venue ready for the event, for the party, for the legacies, and I rolled my ankle and broke my foot. So I gotta
Oh,
have surgery tomorrow. But I
that's
was putting up some of
crazy.
my ganja. Here is some of the the cannabis that I grew this year when I got back from the Caribbean. I put it through bud. It was already in vegetation though.
Oh my gosh.
Some rainbow sherbet that I cultivated and just harvested here about a month ago. And
Oh
so
my.
this just got through the drying cycles, and a nice little purple twinge, nice little gassy aftertaste with a nice earthy, expanding lung feel. It's definitely an indica dominant, but was sativa in the long windedness, which is always a pain in the butt, which makes crop tops my invention.
But anyways, yeah, so I kind of like I had mentioned in our, interactions is I would love to get, I feel like, being in New York and it's coming online now. And, usually what happens is all the innovation and, you guys are so way ahead of us on the West Coast. And it's so great to see like, okay, what's coming up next, what's coming this way. So I that's why I kind of thought I really want to hear what's going on in California, from someone who's there and been there for a long time. So I kind of thought we could just lead that conversation. Yeah,
Okay, that's great. Yeah, I actually worked in the illicit market in New York for many, many years. Over a decade, of course, we have a hard time saying these types of things online or anything, but definitely the medical or illicit days were ran by a lot of what was coming out of NorCal. And there was a lot of different things that put us all at risk, but we did it anyways for the love of the people. We wanted to make sure organic product made it to different places. So seeing the evolution in New York and on the East Coast all the way up to Maine is pretty
yes,
amazing. I always felt like there was a real bridge that needed to be, and that's part of where consulting and education comes in, is by sharing the information, because the East Coast may have their focus, and excuse me, the East Coast in general, all the way up to Canada's focus, has been a lot about commerce and leading the way in political commerce, which has a really like affluent effect on those of us that are actually working hands-on with the plant or with the commerce in general. And so the people that are out in the woods, though, that have had the 30, 50 years of training in the cannabis industry and all the walks of creating these products and innovations, are getting a lot wiped out because there's no bridgeway, there's no gap, there's no way to bridge that information of where, how do you obtain funds, how do you work in real business structure that can compete, though we're not competitive, with the East Coast amount of volume, the amount of commerce savviness, the tightness of the way things operate is a little bit hippier. No offense to my people out there that are listening, in the West Coast, we're kind of irie, where we're very like go with the flow. And if we can find ways to fudge things, we will. But on the East Coast, it's a little bit more tight. They work on Wall Street. They want to, they know the numbers game better than the West Coast. And I see obviously bigger business coming from these entities. But it's really important, as I've seen in working with equity with Oaksterdam and different entities, is to keep those legacy people in place, those people
Oh,
that did persecuted for being in the hustle, being in the game, for all of us. We got persecuted. I personally have federally indicted my people in New York the same. And these are things that continue to go on. So just making sure that those people with the money and the deep pockets that are influencing the greater scheme of lobbying all the way down to social affluence and product innovation, really, we keep it tight. And
yeah.
we the society in a way influencing what's happening next, so that much like the alcohol and tobacco industry, we don't get completely overthrown. We want to have those that 40 years, 50 years of influence and social law still take place. We still got that little black book of ethics in the cannabis world, and we want to keep it there. That's for sure.
How do you think that it should be bridged? Where do you think the problems are, or are you where you?
For
Yeah,
myself, I feel like, again, not to sound cliche, but again, it's education. And so I've gone through 7, 8 years of continued education to get to where I am as an educator. I'm now about to test for 14001 ISO. So um, these are mainstream certifications, mainstream educational bodies that allows the smaller operators to keep up and understand like risk management, assurance, these things that are not necessarily in the scope of a cannabis entity's world, where we're worried about the concepts of, just social equity and who's going to buy our product and what is our package and our labeling looking like, and are we infringing on intellectual property and these types of things. But really in the greater scheme of who's going to be the long-winded business operators, are the ones that are worrying about assurance and what your CGMP marks are, and all of your risk management, and how that litigates working with investors or larger entities that are going to have affluence on your business after the fall of your locals. Because cannabis comes in a green rush into anywhere I've worked in. I've worked in 17 different states and like 11 different countries or something. You
mhm.
watch it come in the green rush, and it rushes in with this huge velocity like a tidal wave, and it pushes up like really really fast till it crests at this. There's so many people invested in it, so much time, so much money, so much plastic fabrication of packaging that never even gets put out, products that get recalled because they're not done properly,
Yeah,
laboratory testing processes, the whole thing gets kind of put up to this grandeur space of like, let's dump a ton of money into it. And then they realize that there's too many for the amount of actual consumers that are there. And then the green flow starts like petering out, and slowly the operators start caving in because there's not enough line, and they don't realize that farming is farming. The person that gets paid for the green bell pepper at the store gets paid crap. It's like 30 cents, but the store is selling it for $3 a piece. So the same thing reflects in cannabis. The farmers aren't profiting from that $75 eighth that you just bought
yeah.
in the pretty package. It's not translating to the farmers. So after that green peak of commerce and the green rush comes on, then you start seeing the dwindle and the economic crisis starts coming on. And this happens time and time again. So licensing and being able to partner with those of influence or knowledge on these waves are often legacy or equity, because they've seen not only on the streets do we see the flow or the brand flow or the marketing flow or the product hype, but also those of us that write for magazines. I write for multiple magazines. We also can influence that hype by you want to make sure you're going to award ceremonies that are valid, like the Emerald Cup. You don't want to sell out to like High Times or something like that, because it is a corrupt entity.
Mhm.
Like that isn't, that's just, you have to do diligence on who you work with, how you work with them, and then let that voice like be continued forward. That's the only way that we can make that melting pot go on, because it's really going to be a hard gap to bridge without being able to say, okay, because at the same time, we have to have cultural reparations in every sense. So when larger companies come in, one of our jobs is to teach them what the society is. What is their culture? What is on the beat, on the
Mm.
street? What is in the hoods? What is in the woods? Boom, 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 you know,
Yeah, yeah.
because culture has to combine with commerce. And in order for anybody to be not exploited, but actually become exemplary in this industry. So that's where we really get the big guys, we get them into the small little events, we get them into that farm and go, this is what we struggle with. We don't have $20 million. We have
Mm.
less than 200,000 to work with, and we're
Mm.
competing against 200 million square feet of greenhouse pumping out mid levels. So
Yeah.
it's hard. So education, I feel, is always that essential point. Always be like leveling up, and then meshing with everybody else that is leveling up on their same front. You know,
So
that's
do
really
you mean like also to me what I see like leveling up on education is business education. Like of course if you were an entrepreneur is you know back in the day, I mean if you're doing whatever you're doing, distributing or growing, you know,
right.
you're entrepreneurial, but now you have to get into the real world like you're saying and compete with these people who are up here. Right. This is my whole thing is I feel like oh my gosh, you know, all these social equity programs, especially in New York, they're doing the big push for the social equity programs and bringing in people, you know, who've never had a business, who are,
But
you know,
that's where predatory investing comes in. And the same
yeah,
down in the Caribbean, where I see a lot of the, I'm not talking down to any sort of legislative programs because we've definitely involved ourselves with them with Oaksterdam as well. But they set those up. You cannot hand somebody something and be like, here, operate. They're like, I don't. I've actually trained myself to avoid taxes. I find my way to fudge everything. Like my job in life right now has been to create a fraudulent front, and now all of a sudden I need to come out when it's not even federally legal. And so at some point there's still a point where you're at a risk and you're
yeah,
not able to deal with banks, and payment processing starts becoming elusive, and there's still a huge amount. So a lot of people come in with these false dreams of like, oh, I'm going to run this giant operation. And again, I tell them, are you a farmer by nature? Because if you're not and you don't have a passion for it, I'm sorry, but you're probably not going to survive at past 18 months of hype. If you want an edibles company, you better know that you're going to be in a kitchen, you're going to be in a laboratory doing infusions. Like it's no different than any other job, just because this plant has a huge amount of social hype behind it. We
right.
are working these jobs, we're still taking huge risks, we're taking huge business loans out that all in all could be faulty. And so having that education and the actual equity mentors that we've built through Oaksterdam was we're getting assigned to people that have those equity licenses given to them. And then I myself, as somebody that's worked in cannabis for 25 years, will literally hold their hand through the entire process, answering any question that they have, you know, and helping them do their risk management and their litigation of contracts and anything that may come up that puts them at as a risk to fail as an entrepreneur. That's really important, though, connecting with mentors that have a greater knowledge than yourself.
Right. I mean, before it even gets off in the state, especially in New York, where you're trying to launch this huge social equity program, which is first and front center of the whole, you know, launch, they don't even have any of they have really so little in place for this. And all you see is disaster train wreck coming, like for these people with these huge, you know, $1 million loan, you know, multi-million dollar loans. And I'm just like, oh my God. And it's just,
It's
it's,
part of the green rush. They did the same with the housing industry. Is they push all of this on because these loans are backed by wherever it comes
Yes.
from, the federal umbrella of loan skeptic that's going on with insurance, assurance, and the way the influx goes on with NASDAQ. So in a large entity, we vote in these things going, okay, legalize it, but they're not understanding what that means. It's able to be exploited in commerce just like anything else. And I tell them as a reflection all the time, look at ibuprofen, look at aspirin. that is a birch tree. How many people know that the
Oh,
aspirin that you're paying $7.38 for at Walmart is the birch tree that's in your front yard?
yeah,
That they are relying on the you know detachment of information from real application. So eventually, what I fear is, cartridges become this is cannabis, and I'm like, no, like this plant is cannabis. Like this is part of the ecosystem of the world. The reason we fight for it is because it can sequester carbon and heal the soil and all these different things, not just turn it into indoor growing that exploits the electricity's company to overthrow this people. Like that's where I
right,
worry.
right, exactly. That's overthrow. Yeah, it's like it's going to be the cannabis bubble. Oh
Right.
man, that's just so depressing. Okay.
Well, I
Well,
try to keep people upbeat by saying that there is ways around it by continuing to educate, learning licensing. When we learn licensing, one of the things that, as me as a patented inventor, I've gone through working with Inventor, which is different licensing companies that have like Stephen Keys and like real inventors that are able to teach the concept of I can sell my ideas, I can sell my processes. If I have a regenerative farming SOP that is properly certified standard operating procedure, I'm able to take this cultivar or whatever it is, protect it with intellectual property rights, and actually offer it to these larger entities and gain my funds through that way. Like there's just different ways of looking at it.
mhm.
We can't all be pot growers. We can't all be hustlers. We can't all be dispensary owners. Everybody's got to just choose their place wisely and continue to like excel and evolve it in however they can.
But I guess looking at the California market and it just wanted to, kind of look at all the products that are out there and, what's trending. And I don't know how much you're looking at what's happening in the New York market. I see, people are starting to, there's a few like, you know, hash rosin products coming out. And,
Mhm.
I know that that's been, solventless has been big the past few years or, that I've been listening. And I feel like that's emerging here, though we are a new market, it's new consumers,
Yeah,
we still have to start slow because they're not even going to know what that means, many of
right.
many of them. So they're starting with a lot of them starting with distillate gummies and things like that. But I see the yeah the hash rosin and solventless products coming out and I actually I'm seeing hash bowls pop up a lot.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
so I think that was trending last year, maybe in California. I might be behind on the times. It's when I'm hearing it, but um, so I guess I just wanted to see as far as products and types of extraction processes like that you see that you really like, especially as a master cultivator and
Well, at the Emerald Cup and different competitions that we work within, even all the worldwide, really, I teach and put on temples, on pedestals, the actual organic rosins. And rosin extraction, of course, is due to heating live matter, possibly cured in some instances, and it actually melts the trichromes off of the plant, leaving a gooey uh, rosin matter. In some of the states that I've worked in, even down to the Virgin Islands lately, I've been seeing a lot of falsified packaging where you'll see resin and it said THC, high quality THC resin instead of rosin. And it is a typo term, but it's actually, again, distillate. And the resin that's left over from distillate has a little bit higher concentration of the THC delta 9 that is found in the basis of tested distillate, which is normally extracted from hemp and things like that, and is quite dirty. Um, I try to, explain to people the different points, and California is going a lot back to the traditional products, which is Rick Simpson oil, full spectrum extractions, where we are kind of, a little bit playing with the alcohol, but not to the point where it's volatile. This is distilled with high quality indicas in the hills of the Sierra Nevadas. And this I refuse to sell, though. We only give this to cancer patients that actually need it. We won't give it away in commerce because, again, it was blessed by the shamans up on the mountains. So
Really? Oh
Definitely
my God, you just gave
rosin.
me goosebumps. Wow.
Beautiful. You're in touch with the energy that we hope to bring to the world. Definitely uh, the high quality rosins, which are made from regenerative farming practices, are probably the highlight. And that's really what we're seeing is the highlight of, even though Emerald Cup is done blind, which we have all the samples given in just numbered jars. Judges, we do never ever see brands. We have no idea. The edibles are where it gets a little sticky. We actually are judging the edibles on the packaging as well, how that packaging is presented to commerce, if it has the proper labeling, the ingredients, and going on to what would be CGMP level, just overview on how it is you're displaying this commerce. Because again, we cannot open a package of edibles and give it to the judges. We can't have that. So we get the full package for the edibles markets, and we consider the highest level products made out of the rosin extracts or cold water hash, which, even though it's water is considered a solvent, it is an organic solvent and completely evaporates if cured correctly. And an organic cold water hash is something I've worked with since the turn of the century, and something I was taught, using fabrics. Now we have bubble bags and things like that for extraction methods.
Oh God, that's so
Pure stuff.
exciting.
It's very high potency, and it gives you a lot of amicability with different infusions, because different oils or different recipes will call for different forms of extraction methods. One recipe may work with rosin, while you need, obviously isolates for like beverages, which is a huge hype. I think this year we had like um, 45 beverage entries into the edibles category, which was the most that I had ever seen. And that's from like Wonder. We had some of the mainstream brands like Pabst Blue Ribbon created a cannabis beer, which is
Oh.
replacing olive. And we had like several different innovations from not only the lower craft farmers, all the way up to large entities, which are like, wow, this is like Pabst Blue Ribbon, like kind of entities. And Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, they produced like a hemp lager as well that had, I think it was 5% cannabinoids in it. So those were beautiful innovations. We're seeing it go all over the place though, because in 2019 we had like Sumu. This one company created like shrimp chips
Mhm.
that were introduced, and that was the Sumo company. And for me, you can eat a whole bag and I wouldn't even feel anything, but a new consumer might feel a slight effect.
Mhm.
But some of those infusions, if you air pop it, expose it to too much heat, it actually defiles some of the THC and cannabinoid content. So, but they're fun innovations, they sell
Yeah.
well. Right now in California, we're seeing legislation turn back like they did to us in 2007 for the medical marijuana, which was, we got all rated over packaging that was appealing to children. It
Mhm.
was during the early stages of medical marijuana laws really refining into what now became the Legalization Act, seeing how society is affected by packaging and all these types of
Yeah.
things. So right now, legislative bodies really starting to put the hammer down on, diminishing the colorful packages on Mylar, starting to put it back into a control measure of like no cartoon characters, no like nothing that appeals to children, no
Yeah.
high end like rainbow color like Skittles crap. It's a
Well,
no.
that's all
And
California. They're on our
yeah,
shelves here. They're on our shelves. It's like crazy.
it's
And
part of
it's
the
not
hype
allowed
that
here.
it's definitely part of that hype.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's
It's but it looks terrible.
looks terrible. It looks terrible. And yes, but you see them, on all the illegal, just smoke shops here. But I just want to ask you, so is the Emerald Cup, is that coming up soon? The new
That will be this year in the beginning of April.
Okay.
I could let you know the exact. I think it's the 7th and the 8th of April, and this year will be the first year that we have it in Oakland at the giant. It was the giant, not the Wrigley Field, but oh my goodness, the Coliseum. And we have a lake body. It's right, easy access. and many great bands are coming this year. So I'm excited to
Oh,
see what.
cool. I mean, yeah, it's so far away from me that I never really kind of concentrate on it, but I'm obviously I know it's a very regarded you know, competition, I guess. But so so you're like you're going through the products now and kind of reviewing the products as a judge for the April show, is that right?
We're actually only going to be taking admissions. I think admissions start in like a month, and
Okay.
then we have 2 months to judge the products once they're out.
Okay, so the beverage is the 30/40 that you were talking about is from the last Emerald
Yeah,
Cup.
that was last year. That was the 2022 session.
Okay. And was wait, yeah, 2022 because last year, yeah. Wait, did you skip 2023? I think you did, right? Emerald Cup, did they skip 2023?
We actually just moved it to April. So instead of having it December 7th, which is where I just broke my foot, we had a legacy party, which was just a VIP invite only for all of us that have been working in the industry for over 15, 20 years. And so had a great thing. It was the announcement of the largest Emerald Cup that's coming up here in Oakland. So it should be fantastic. Definitely find your way. Come on down.
And maybe that'll be my trip. Wow, that sounds amazing. And also it must have been a great party with all your friends.
Oh
Your
yes,
your
if I wasn't ended up on crutches, but
oh
we
yeah,
always
except for that.
everybody's. We have an Emerald Cup family, which is extends all over the place now of people that are just continuing to be in it for the passion of the industry. Because again, once the crest of the green rush comes down, it really just leaves the people that truly just love what it is, and it
Yeah.
pushes it aside to everyone else.
Yeah, yeah. So when you were mentioning the beverages and the Pabst Blue Ribbon and or what were you saying? Who was jumping in the beer people? Was it Pabst? You said? Yeah.
Yeah,
So is this their method to start testing and obviously before they need federal legalization? Is that their way to start product testing R&D kind of and get
I
their
definitely think many of the large businesses have now stepped their toes in to start doing some R&D in general, social R&D, going, okay, what product might actually hit? What would, what's worth protecting? What's worth like, spending our time lobbying for? Because that's going to be a huge point is extracting or pushing their lobbying funds towards different aspects. These larger businesses have the ability to change state laws and to affect them a lot. I currently am visiting Reno, Nevada. I'm about an hour and a half from my property down in Grass Valley, and this state is completely crazy because they say weed's legal and cannabis is legal to grow your own, but it's a federal offense if you try to grow a plant within 25 miles of a cannabis dispensary.
oh,
So, I mean, you have to be like one really remote person in Nevada to be living 25 miles or plus past a city.
right,
It's
right.
going to be really hard to find that. And so, I mean, there's a lot of desert, but still, that's the way. It's because those people that own the largest licenses lobbied for that law to pass because it, by law, forces everybody within 25 miles to have to go to the dispensary and
Right.
not have the right to grow their own and continue to criminalize growing their own, funneling funds back to that, which they pay the taxation, which goes back into corporate litigation, and the cycle continues. That's why we have to stay affluent and keeping legacy influence in place.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. So maybe, I kind of I think these major beer companies kind of coming in and trying to, they're smart to do that. I mean, to go right to all of the legacy people, the growers who've been around for a long time and, get their opinions and maybe forge some partnerships in some way. I mean, I hope they do that. I hope that that like you said, they bring, these experts in and we
Oh,
all move.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And again, they're smart to do, as I was reflecting on earlier, licensing, which is taking some of these elders' ideas and
Ah,
really creating them, selling the ideas of what has built the industry on the streets, these tinctures, these infusions, these salves, all of these things. We could never sell something like RSO because this is sacred medicine. But people are
Yeah.
boiling huge amounts of vodka and different lower grade and calling it RSO or full spectrum extract, putting it into capsules and selling it as a gel capsule of RSO. So different things will be exploited on different levels. We just got to keep it as honest as possible. And otherwise, we need to train all of the people that have taken the lobbyist money to see the plight of not only the people, but the environment, and making sure that all the waste from the people that are distilling, that it's going someplace properly. It's not getting dumped back into a poor ecosystem. I don't want to see cannabis being a pollutant,
Yeah.
and not just the people, the environment and the minds of kids too. Like, we can't greenwash society. We need to educate it as an alternative to drugs and alcohol, like
Yes.
plant medicine and stuff.
So, so how would you, you've mentioned licensing from these, elders. What kind of, how, I mean, RSO is not like, what would they license, say?
Well,
Like, what kind of opportunities do
anything. Okay, so I'm just going to throw out some examples because I consult with all sorts of different people.
okay.
So an elder has an idea that they want to patent. If I gain intellectual property portfolio by coming to me and I teach the person how I gain a portfolio for them, that gives their commerce ability a solid structure and foundation, and also a valid business number of how I can marketplace valuate their idea. And so by doing this and going through this cycle of innovation, personal innovation, the recipe for that tincture, the recipe for that salve becomes intellectual property. That is an idea that they own. And then all of a sudden around that, if they do it properly, you can't copy them. You can't copy them.
Oh,
This is
yeah,
intellectual property.
yes.
And then they take this idea and I can show people how to do this. I'm very well versed in it. And we actually teach how to pitch to these larger corporations that are, we have the money, we have the know-how, but we don't have the perfect recipe that has been going for 25 years. We
Mhm.
don't have that. We don't have that intellectual property that can become a brand name. So let's say I have a like a liniment for breast massage, and I was like, I want this to be Mary Jane Society podcast liniment breast massage, just specifically for women's health. And it's going to be branded Mary Jane Society's liniment for breast health.
Mhm.
I would take my idea and my recipe and I go to Mary Jane Society and I say, would you like to buy my idea? Would you like to partner up with my
Mhm.
idea? And I'm going to help you innovate further, and we're going to partner through this. And by doing that, licensing and partnership, we're able to combine the legacy information, the elders, the people that spend all their time in the labs, in the gardens, and we're going to not waste all that energy and information. We're going to give it to the larger people that have more exposure, that have more contentability, more distribution. I
Yeah.
myself am selling my patent because at this point in the manufacturing game, it is smarter for me to take royalties to a larger distributing company than it is for me to continue trying to venture capital it myself. Just
Mhm.
strictly from shipping trades,
Yeah.
all of the the shipping lines that go from any sort of internal or international, sourcing spaces becomes a giant conglomerate pain in the butt for an entrepreneur. And so we
Mhm.
want to make that your thoughts and what you do into a package, and then partner with those that have that amicability.
And especially since all these multi-state operators have their own products, they're vertically integrated, they have their products, and you do read about people, they are partnering with certain people to yeah, it is happening. You do see it happening, but it needs to happen more, and they would be smart to take their R&D to these people. So now, like, what kind of can you get patents on things like that? Because I mean, patents are hard to get. So actually, the first question is, what patents do you have?
I own, right now I'm working on my third full federal patent. Excuse me, I should have put my hair up.
Oh,
My crop tops greenhouses is patented as a parabolic shape. I am patent number 10,821,332 in the federal patent secretary. Only 7% of patents are granted to women. Only 8% of patents are even filed by women. They are not something that is normally in the historical books of intellectual property worldwide. Women are not normally set into those places of proprietorship. Underneath crop tops greenhouses, I have 21 micro patents, and this is a phrase that I'm using to say that a patent is a basis of discoveries. So I may have a parabolic shape which extends through a shaft that has a telescoping pole, which has buttons that affiliate the dexterity or strength of that object. Every aspect of my crop tops greenhouses is individually patented and protected, meaning that I went to the patent examiner, I explained why that was unique, and specifically for my invention and specifically for the cultivation of horticulture, and was granted proprietary rights to each of those aspects, making it 22 patents in all. And right now I am working on two others that I cannot discuss online, but there'll be more for me here real quick, and we're working with some great companies that I think will definitely be an international thing.
oh my gosh. So, because I mean, I think I've heard or I know that you cannot get a patent on any sort of cultivars or anything like, plant. It's not true.
No, I worked in genetic patenting for several years now. Like I said, I have been running the original AFGUI for 22 years. I held the same mother for 19 years in homeostasis, which is the point of where it does not grow nor shrink, but similar to the practices of what you would grow or cultivate a bonsai with. And so, using those horticultural methods and processes, I was able to do a lot of research on this particular cultivar and allow it to environmentally and climatically mutate to my specific endemic environment. I can take seed stock, and we have gone through. I work with the first patented cultivar, which is given to Steve Covey of Covey Cryogenics in 1992. He patented the first cannabis cultivar, which is dominant of the train wreck and two
Oh,
different Hawaiian haze cultivars. Doc Ray of Doc Ray Genetics holds patents on 3 of his cultivars. We can also teach plant breeding rights, which is the ability. It's different than a patent in the way that it still protects it as an endemic cultivar, but you cannot displace it by backbreeding, and you're allowed to work internationally. So it basically protects your cultivar as it gets passed away in seed or scion form throughout the globe. So there is different ways to protect your cultivars or your genetics. A very important part of educating definitely is learning how to do your trials. For plant breeding rights, you need to do trials of upwards of 3 years, and I can show you how to document each of your discoveries so that your research compiled becomes the intellectual property that will cover your genetic portfolio for
wow.
sure.
I bet there's a lot of, I bet there's a lot of breeders out there that would like to do that, right? Because I mean, it's such a that's the passion, that's the game, that's the, I from the people that I'm just kind of meeting here, that you just the way they're always talking about all the different strains and I mean, it's crazy, So okay, so I bet there's a lot. That's not happening yet, but that's probably going to be people are going to really start being curious about that pretty soon, I would think.
There's a huge, I would say those are more of the people that aren't on the consumer level. The breeding programs that I work with, the breeders that I have the Caribbean Cannabis Project right now, where I have invested a lot of time into compiling genetics to do genetic trials for the University of Virgin Islands and Amsterdam in the Caribbean, because it takes a certain amount of years for you to climatize and mutate a genetic so that it reaches its highest potential. You can't just take a seed from one place and put it somewhere else and expect it to reach its highest potential in those new climates. It takes time. You need to allow it to acclimate through the processes of psioning. So as we do this, and there's been a lot of people now. There's even a company by Jeff Hamilton canopy right, where it's teaching people how to protect their cultivars through blockchain. But since so many cultivars base genetics came from the West Coast, a lot of us have already had the information, while those in the central and eastern United States will be working with cultivars that have a back genetic log of already having been protected. And so they won't be able to have as much amicability in protection if they're working with a genetic that was already had plant breeding rights or patents in the past in its cultivars, such as Zittles, Runts, and these name brands that have been protected now at this point.
Mm.
There's a game going on with the cultivar breeders where we can backbreed it 2 times, 3 times within a 3-year period and negate a patent. And so there is ways around it, and it's just about like holding firm to your proper documentation.
I mean, maybe it's happening more out there, but we're not even thinking about that yet, because we're so busy trying to get launched over here in the East Coast. But you guys are like, what's next? We're like, but I was talking to a patent attorney who has a background in cultivation. He's based out of Texas, and he works a lot with research universities that it's called technology transfer partnerships. So he said it's not as well known that these research universities have a specific department called the technology transfer departments because they want outside people to come in and partner with their researchers to commercialize these inventions that they're working on, or these things. So I just think that seems like a great idea.
It is a great idea. One of the hitches that we have working in the university bodies is they're federally funded. Even if they're land grant funded, they're federally funded. So most of the university's research can only really be based on hemp, and then we're under a lot of assumption of hemp is a different application. Though we're using some of the cannabinoids in some of the research, the cannabinoid spectrum is quite different than with a THC bearing indica dominant genetic. Again, hemp is a sativa, but it's a specific type of sativa that doesn't have it has CBD dominant and not THC delta 9 dominant compromisation. So when we can't do as much cannabinoid and terpene development or horticultural adjustment, we can do the emulation, but there's a certain stopping point where hemp research in a federally funded land grant university body cannot go to those new places yet. And even though we're starting to see some of the universities break those ledges using medical application as their catalyst, it's still hearsay and not hands-on.
Yeah.
Hands-on, we're trying to create hands-on horticultural departments where we walk in, I have a sample garden there, you walk in as a student, this is cannabis. It
Mhm.
echoes it echoes hemp, but really hemp is grown differently. um, think of something that's 14,000 plants per acre opposed to something that's 1,400 plants per acre. That's a
Right.
vast amount of difference in how you grow.
Yeah, maybe something like along the lines of formulations, like not medical, but it's still far away, but maybe that kind of research and universities are in medical areas. So maybe that's something down the road that somebody can do. But yeah, I just think, yeah, it seems interesting.
I'm hoping.
Yeah, yeah. And now, so just wanted to go back a little bit to the extraction processes that people are doing and the innovation happening there. And I remember, I don't know, it seems like you kept hearing the buzzword like cryo cure or cryo, like is that the freezing? It seemed like that was like Oregon, like that was kind of happening. And maybe it is happening out there, but I never seem to hear about it again. And what do you think about that? And what is it actually, if you could tell us?
Okay, so cryocure is methods of basically freeze drying cannabis, and there's only certain so let's back up for a moment. When you have a cartridge that you're smoking, it's going to be a multitude of different things. You could have an RSO product, a distillate product, which are both darker in nature.
Mm.
Or you can have an amber product that's going to be closer to my hair color, which is going to be the rosin extracts and a little bit of the pure THC concept. When those rosin extracts is just heat, again, no solvents, no nothing, it's just heat. And in pressure is pushing those molecules together and breaking it so it becomes a gooey mess, which can be put into a chilled area to make it so that it's workable. And they put that into a small cartridges, which is the live resin, rosin cartridges. Excuse me, not
Mm.
resin. Resin is distillate. Rosin is the actual trichromes directly from the plant.
And
Um,
resin is the leftover from distillate? I wasn't
yeah,
sure about that. Okay. Okay.
and a lot of
Big difference.
seeing it like on corner groceries, marts at the corner and stuff like that, they're pushing a lot of hemp derived products, Delta 8, THC Delta 9, trying to put a D12, THCV, all of these alternative cannabinoids in higher concentrations is actually made through a distillate process where the hemp is broken down into a distillate and then they isolate certain cannabinoids and concentrate them after the testing procedure is done, so they negate the law. And even though they're not supposed to be doing that, negate the law, they concentrate it back into an edible, a gummy, or some other form of smoking product or distillate product where you can put into a vape cart. And that's how they're just concentrating the minor cannabinoids into it. But when you're actually working with true THC Delta 9 bearing cannabis plants, then all of those, you wouldn't be able to do that kind of thing because you'd have like 70% THC, which you're seeing in the rosin carts, you're seeing in the high end pure THC extracts. And so some of them use BHO, which is a butane solvent. Some of them use the CO2. CO2 again goes with the cryo cure concept, where they're freeze drying the trichromes off of the top layer and storing it. So some of the larger farms that can create all these carts in all these abundances, they do what they call fresh frozen. So
Yeah.
they'll go into a live farm, cut down all the plants, and then freeze all the product. All right. So then when the product is frozen, it starts dehydrating a certain amount because we can't extract cannabinoids from plants until it's at least 68% dehydrated. It's more like 72 to be able to be smokable because the plants are 3/4 of the way plant or water molecules. So we need to evaporate that out through solvent, through some sort of extraction process. So when the rosin is burst, that's that beautiful amber colored stuff. That is literally just, you could rub the plant with your hands and create Indian charas. That's the same product. You're not going through any sort of chemical change. Nothing is happening. It's just smashed true trichromes directly from the plant. So this is pure and a properly cultivated organic matter. The rest of the process is like cryo cure. They would stuff all of these into a CO2 chamber, cause some agitation, which will break off the trichromes in some way, trying to store or dry using a freeze dry method. They say that the terpenes are still intact, but terpenes are stored in a water molecule that is coated with oil. So if it dehydrates too much, the terpenes will be erased. So if you were to store everything in a cryo cure chamber or in those types of elements, what the people on the streets in society have seen was the freeze drying methods are not preserving the terpenes as much as I cure for 3 weeks underneath the ground. And that same as wine or potatoes, the finer curing is very slow. It's at like a temperature that doesn't create combustion of the molecules prematurely. It preserves certain molecules like terpenes and flavonoids. And that goes into more of the wine science where they're using the different elements to the tannins and things. They need to preserve it in special ways. And so cryocure didn't really catch on because not only was it overpriced for anybody to participate in freeze dry methods of curing, it was it couldn't become the standard because it really only applied to one product, which was the giant extraction of fresh frozen.
Mm.
And so in general, rosin isn't extracted in those methods because if you were to freeze rosin prior to extracting it, it will change the composite of it. So they do that, but they're doing it with flash frozen, not freeze drying. So
Oh,
they're just dropping the temperature so that the water in the plant is frozen rather than freeze drying it, which also has a CO2 added to it and some sort of air eradication or negative air pressure chamber. And so it just didn't catch on because the price and the applicability within manufacturing companies, it didn't become cost effective for most places and didn't catch on.
oh, interesting. Okay. So I can't believe we've been talking for an hour, so I'm going to try to wind this down. I have two last questions. And one is what is your favorite like ratio combination of cannabinoids? Are you just a full spectrum or do you have a
I definitely
special what's your favorite of plant and combination that you love to?
well, I'm definitely a flower organic girl, and the organic flower to me has such a more depth. When I work into extracts, I like the pure rosins that are regeneratively farmed because you can taste and smell what you taste. So I'm holding a flower and it's going to smell and taste the same way all the way through the whole process of it, engaging with it. So I can smell it on the plant and then put it in my pipe and it still smokes and smells the same way as the plant. That's what I enjoy. And I definitely preserve and prefer the higher THC Delta 9 because I am traditionally an indica girl where I have a high tolerance and I'm speedy. And as you've seen, I often am I'm quick to move and it slows me down enough to where I'm like, hi, how are
Yeah,
you?
yeah,
Do you
yeah.
want to make a Lego car together? Like
Yeah, yeah, no, I know. Yeah, yeah,
some of the
definitely.
sativas, I'm like, okay, everything, you guys, let's change the world. All right, let's go. All right, can you
Yeah,
smoke some more? Let's go. I don't calm
yeah,
down.
yeah, that's kind of me too. So okay. And then I guess the last question is if you would you give any advice to the New York farmers or who, cultivators here about how they can survive in, in this market? Because, once federal legalization comes and borders open up, we're going to get killed by the West Coast, basically. So what would you say, what advice would you give our farmers?
The farmers of the East Coast, I implore with you to stop the egos and the need to be in control or feel like you're going to be the top dog. Sometimes that people don't realize when they come into like this hype mode again if cannabis has been illicit for so long, they think that it's some glory hole of expectations and you partner for the wrong reasons. You need to learn collaboration and cooperation. And one of the biggest points that we can save ourselves with is agricultural cooperations. Dole has a brand that has 500,000 farmers underneath one label. These are people all over the world that farm
Mhm.
Dole products. None of those farmers need to be the one that's in the control. They all work for the greater good, which is one label. So learning agricultural cooperations, learning how to work together and keeping that community is a real core strength of how to get through it because you're going to be able to support each other through economic times that will change, laws will change, compliance that will come through. We don't know what the feds will do. And the
Mhm.
only way that we can really succeed and evolve our industry and our growing practices to level up with mainstream is just learn how to do agricultural cooperative taxes, branding, market together, have affiliate affluences, and just like learn to trust each other again and make it about us against them is a positive thing. And we
Yeah,
can do
yeah. It seems from what I can see that there is a great community with the farmers here. There's, a couple different layers here. Um,
Mhm.
like there's a lot of legacy people out there. But like the legal farmers, there's a lot of movement among the growers, different
Oh,
levels.
absolutely.
And I,
And all of them, we have different models here, like farm cut is a one label. So they have all the farmers work under one label. And so there's 6 different farms that pay taxes as an agricultural cooperative. And all of those farms are saving money because they package and label at the same facility. They're using the same label and branding. They're using the same processes to guarantee the commitment to quality and assurance and consistency within their product line. They communicate together. They are able to buy bulk amendments, bulk fertilizers, bulk everything,
Oh,
and
yeah.
pass it out between 7 or 8 different farmers that are working together. That collective cooperative agricultural model is a taxation model. It's a business model that works extremely well because you see all these different places that have strawberries or pineapple farms. Like I was saying, Dole, we are an agricultural crop. You have to work together and shrink all of the needs values. You can't have 17 different manufacturing companies in a 7-block radius. It doesn't work. You can have all of those companies white labeling from 2 manufacturing companies and having just work together. Those are the only way, because the bigger money is so big, it's as big as every single one of the operators all together and then some. These are Bayer Pharmaceuticals. These are people that, if all of us even work together, all of us, we probably cannot still compete with them. So create your agricultural cooperative and just have community collaboration as much as possible in cannabis.
Oh, that's great
Pass
advice.
the pipe. Remember to pass the pipe.